Hello and welcome to this pre-recorded event for GCSE Design and Technology, Textiles. Feedback on the June 2015 Unit 2 exam. To help you get the most out of this feedback, you may want to have the following documents handy, as we will refer to them during the session. The 2015 exam paper. The 2015 mark scheme. This slide indicates the aims and objectives of this presentation, which I hope you find both useful and interesting. Question 11A, Part 2 asks for a straightforward response to the use of the equipment shown. This candidate was successful, as they were able to describe the use without repeating wording used in the question. The response showed an acceptable level of knowledge and led to a mark being awarded. This type of question at the beginning of the paper is generally very accessible. However, students must show independent knowledge and be careful not to rely on the wording given in the question to gain marks. A key message here for students would be to avoid repeating the wording used in the question as the main marking feature of the response, as this does not show knowledge and will not gain marks. This student describes the method by which the oven glove could be made safe. For example, explaining it has layers of wadding. They then expand on this for the second mark by clarifying the need to protect the hand and insulate the wearer from heat, using examples of hot utensils. Wherever they can, students should include examples of items to enhance answers, drawing on experiences from the world around them. While this question, 11B Part 3, was generally well answered, some students lost marks as they omitted to use connectives to justify reasons that matched the initial point made. Although this candidate displayed some knowledge of what would make the oven glove more suitable, the answer lacks the technical information needed to make it a fully developed response. This candidate scored 1 mark. This slide shows some examples of why students did well. Students should be mindful of the command words used in questions, as these indicate the kinds of response expected. This candidate was able to give a response which identified what needed to be checked, for example, the lines, and then why that check was needed, for example, so that they were equally spaced apart. This question required a complete control procedure in order to show the correct knowledge. A statement such as, check lines, would not give enough information to know what to check the lines for. Question 11B Part 2 was well answered, as many students were able to use the diagram to aid their response, even when they had little knowledge of the formal name of the technique shown. As such, students were still able to gain a mark for a correct quality control. Question 12 is the design question, where students are asked to produce 2 separate design solutions to the 8-point specification provided. Each response must be different and no marks are awarded for features that are the same in both solutions. This learner presented a well-organized page with clear annotations, each slightly separated. Other features of good examples were numbering to indicate which specification point was being referenced and clarity of sketch. For ease of assessing, I will be referring to the specification points in number order as they appear in the question paper. In this example, all specification points were met appropriately, enabling the student to access the maximum 8 marks. Specification points as follows. 1. Waistband indicates coverage of body, large surface area. 2. Name in large text. 3. Wide shoulder straps do not dig in. 4. Knee length, no tripping. 5. Made from oilcloth, so can be wiped off. 6. Wide neck, easy to put on. 7. Embroidery technique. 8. Loop to hang from. The response shown on this slide gained 5 marks. The 3 marks lost were because explanations were absent or were non-specific for the following. Specification point 1. Covering below the knee was duplicated as a response for specification point 4, not allowing the latter to be given. Specification point 3. Satin material does not say why satin is comfortable, leaving the examiner to question the candidate's knowledge. Specification point 5. Could be put in the wash is too general a response for credit. While this question was generally well answered, some students failed to gain marks where responses were vague and unclear as to their suitability in meeting the specification point. It is important that students provide adequate reasons to justify statements when trying to meet specification points. This slide exemplifies some reasons why students did well on this question. Look at the example in this slide. Using your mark scheme, decide what mark you think should be awarded and why. This is a point at which you can pause the video to carry out the activity if you wish. Six marks were given to the first design idea. It lost 2 marks for not showing it covering most of the body, specification point 1, and for using the same method to be comfortable and safe, specification point 3. Improvement on this design idea could be to have the design drawn on a body to show how long the sleeves or bodice were, and by adding a feature such as an elasticated waist to avoid duplication. The second idea scored 4 marks, where points 2, 3, 5 and 7 were repeated. Some features were too similar. For example, laminate and a waterproof finish could only be credited once. Clear, detailed explanation of some specification points were given, as seen with specification 4, as it gives a specifically named component with good reasoning, and specification point 6. The latter point meant examiners did not need to be concerned about an incorrect response of back fastenings, as the learner gives added detail of poppers attached to long ties. However, specification point 2 provides a repeat of design idea 1. The name badge annotation is too similar to the logo without another method of delivery, for example, applique. This slide gives some reasons why students did do well in this question. This slide shows some reasons why students didn't do well in this question. When answering question 14b, part 2, some students demonstrated good levels of knowledge as they not only correctly named the machinery, but also what it could be used for. However, generally students did not produce an abundance of correct answers when tested on the machinery needed to produce knitted fabrics. Although many students understand the difference between one-off, batch and mass production, the technical vocabulary needed to name the equipment used in high-speed and volume production was rarely given. Students would benefit from engaging in activities outside of workroom practices. This could be in the form of a factory visit or by wider reading and watching video clips. This would make a great research topic and home learning task, from which students will have the opportunities to share knowledge and understanding with others. While question 14C was generally well answered, some students lost marks because they tried to reword the question and provide the answer by implementing key words such as needle in their response. This response shows some knowledge as the student uses the word fleece. However, it is up to the examiner's judgment to decide whether the student understands that fibres are used in a random format. Unfortunately, the response then gives the information not woven to make a yarn, which is confusing and is incorrect for the direction that the answer should go in. This good example uses good technical language and provides a clear point, and is supported by a further linked statement. The candidate was awarded the full 2 marks. This slide gives some reasons why students didn't do well. In question 13A, this student shows knowledge of the characteristic of silk being able to keep you warm and the fact that it's easy to dry were credited. However, this was not reinforced by an explanation of why the fibres perform in that way. Unfortunately, due to the similarity of the characteristics and matching justification, the learner was given 1 mark as they appear on the same bullet point of the mark scheme. This style of question typically allowed students to gain access to at least 1 out of the 4 marks available and was often successful in that regard. Many students were able to give characteristics, but much fewer were able to link suitable justifications to the initial characteristic given. Matching properties or characteristics of fibres to reasons or justification of why they would be suitable in certain situations is a valuable and fundamental part of the textile course and is best approached through familiarity and repetition. On the face of this, the question appears to have been answered well by the candidate as they pull out features such as the fibre being warm, can be dyed well, and a seemingly good reason for the positive dyeing outcome, to achieve rich colour. However, on closer inspection, the justification does not actually give the reason why it is able to hold dye well, but reiterates that it can be dyed well. While this question was generally well answered, some students lost marks, as in this instance, because the clearly incorrect response to justifying warmth is not linked to the fibre, but to the need of keeping warm. Other unsuccessful responses were linked to the styling of the gown. The candidate was awarded 2 marks. Students should be conscious that their justifications are often better when they use technical language to substantiate their initial point. For example, looking at the high absorbency level of silk would give a good reason as to why dye penetration is so successful. This candidate performed much better as they used keywords, such as good luster, linked with the good reasoning as to why this characteristic exists, as the fibre is continuous and smooth. They also mention the crease-resistant characteristic and justify this with the point that creases may disrupt the aesthetics. Students should be encouraged to write in positive terms when asked to give benefits and suitability of fibres. This answer is an improvement on the previous 2 and gained 4 marks. This slide shows examples of why students didn't do well. Look at the response shown on this slide. Using your mark scheme, decide what mark you think should be awarded and why. Once you've summarised the task, you may want to pause at this point to carry out the activity. This response achieved 4 marks for this question, as explained in the annotations. Improvements to this piece of writing could be to give more detail and direct the focus of the response to the identified target audience of the designer's client and consumer, giving more examples regarding the types of testing, customer satisfaction, or what the natural setting entailed. Reasons why students did do well in this question. Reasons why students didn't do well in this question. Common issues with the past paper and suggestions for improvement. If you would like to know more about examination statistics, you may find these links of interest to you. GCSE English subjects and Maths are changing first for first teaching in September 2015, with first assessments in summer 2017. GCEs for a range of subjects are changing first for first teaching in September 2015, with first assessments in summer 2017. We have just published our specifications on the Edexcel website. They have been published early in draft form to enable teachers to have early sight of our proposed approach. We are also running a series of launch events too. Our draft specs and SAMs, as well as further information about our launch events, can be found on edexcel.com. We constantly look to improve the delivery of our training and appreciate all delegate feedback. Delegates will soon receive an email directing them to our online feedback form. The form takes no more than a couple of minutes to complete. Please ask them to take the time to let us know their thoughts by filling in this short form.